tumefika, tumeona wema wako, ndiposa tunasema wewe ni Ebeneza. Mahali tumeona ushindi wako, ndiposa tunasema wewe ni Ebeneza. Tumefika, tumeona.
I greet you in the name of Jesus Christ. My name is Mary Wanjau. I love the Lord as my personal Savior. He saved me at the age of 17 in 1964. And since then, I have tried to follow Him as I try to keep step with Him and confessing my sins, praising Him and thanking Him for all what He does to me. In 1969, I met a young man who asked me to join him, marry him, and then we would join the ministry of Jesus Christ as he was feeling called to be a minister of the word. He is not feeling well just now, but he says, "Greetings to you all, members of St. Andrews." He loves all the groups, even you Women's Guild, the choir, the youth, everybody. And he always prays for you all. I feel honored to be asked by the Women's Guild of St. Andrews to tell them how the guild came to St. Andrews. You know, this is the 100th year since this group of Women's Guild was started, and sometimes I feel proud when I talk about it, because some of the things that I know about Women's Guild, I was told by my mother, who was one of the first girls who was taken from the village by the missionaries to come to the mission area where one lady missionary started this group, the guild. The guild, they called it Girls' Guild. Guild meaning just a group of people with one mind and seeking to have one goal. And so she started it. When she started it, my mother was one of them in 1922, where my father also was ordained as one of the first elders in the same year, before he was again ordained as a pastor, minister of the word, in 1926 in the Presbyterian Church of East Africa. It was called that time the Church of Scotland Mission. In fact, that's what is in my books as I wrote my name. I would write Church of Scotland Mission. And before I talk about St. Andrews, allow me to go back a little, because we cannot dissociate from that history of the Women's Guild, especially the way it was narrated by our pastor, the moderator of the General Assembly there at Kikuyu last Sunday, 29th of May, during the centennial meeting. And he gave a very nice, quick history of this lady, Miss Watson, who came to Kenya. She got married in Mombasa to Watson, and then they came, a young missionary, and then they came to Kikuyu, Togotok. And just after 1 year, he died, Watson died, and the girl was left a widow, no child, in a foreign country. But she was very brave, and she helped to continue with the work that her husband had just started in 1 year to build that Church of Torch, Kemuri. And she helped, and you can even see, as the moderator said, and we all know, that she is the one who laid the foundation stone of that church. After that, she collected a few girls from the neighboring villages there, and she started that group of girls that they called Girls Guild. And I said the guild was just a word of people coming together as a group with one goal. And I think, home, they had these girls guild, and all what she did is to start another one here in Kenya. And from that time, from Kikuyu, she went to Tumutumu, and they also started that group. And that's where I said my mother could remember the time they would go, these missionaries would go to the village and ask some of the girls, those who are willing, to go to the mission and become a group. They changed their clothes from the sheets, and they would wear kind of a gown, and they looked very clean and smart, but their parents was very much against it. From there, the guild has grown. We have many members from that time, and the history has been said and told in the national level as this centennial was being prepared. You can read from there, but I know what he wanted today is how it reached St. Andrew's Church. At St. Andrew's Church, the guild, the Kenyan guild was not anywhere in their books, because St. Andrew's was a presbytery that Church of Scotland called Overseas Presbytery. One, Nairobi. There was another church at Nakuru, St. Ninian. There is one Eldoret. I don't know whether they are still there. There was one at Dar es Salaam and one at Mombasa. And so, in 1968, when my husband we were abroad, when we were told you are going back to Kenya and joined St. Andrew's Church, that is where you have been posted. And we arrived at St. Andrew's in August 1968. I remember these whites met us at the airport with a car, and then we are taken to St. Andrew's, just next to the church there, behind where parking is. Behind that parking, there was the manse, the pastor's house. And so it was there already, beds. The fridge was packed with food. And But little did they know that we Africans, we are not like whites. We just couldn't come after years and just join the church. We asked that we go home. We just go to Shaggy and stay with the people. And so we left and we went home, Nyeri, and we stayed for some times. After all, my husband didn't know how to drive the car, so we left the car there, and we were taken home by, of course, our people who had met us. Then when we arrived back to the church at St. Andrews, we got into the manse, and then at the church, as my husband took his duties as his wife, I was told that in the Constitution of Scotland, which we are now following, we are not in the Kenyan church, even in the pay or anything. We were told that the Constitution says that the pastor's wife is the leader of the women, the leader of the Women's Guild, that is called the president. So I was the president of the Women's Guild, of the whole group. It was all white. All members except perhaps one there and another one there was full of white people. Morning service on Sunday and the evening service at 6:30 every Sunday. And so we joined them. It was not easy because I had no one now I could consult, because as I said, the Women's Guild, the Constitution, I had to follow. And in reports that we wrote, and I think I said this again here at St. Andrews, during the time we were remembering the first elders to be ordained in 1922, we were there. My husband now could find two people I could remember that helped him. One was the late Ambassador Mogo, was a member of that church, and another lawyer called Waruhio. There are two other people, but I can't remember their names. And so he started that way. And me with the women, I found the women were very good. They were very obedient. They followed and obeyed what the leader had said. As at times I asked for their help because, of course, I didn't know much. And they were obedient, punctual, and details, giving details to very little things. And what was difficult for me is when we had to entertain and take care of the visitors, many visitors who were coming to church from the sister churches, Dar es Salaam. Could hear a letter saying so and so. A couple was arriving from Dar es Salaam, and then you take care of them. Of course, the church was helping a lot, but the women at St. Andrews were really working hard to work hand in hand with the pastors. That's one thing I learned. The punctuality, the obedience, the cleanliness, all these things. And had I not been abroad and stayed, being in their churches, I must say it would have been very hard. But I had learned a little about them. And so there we are, a guild. We were only answerable to the Church of Scotland in Glasgow. That's the only letter that I could read concerning the Women's Guild here in Kenya. That was something else. When I asked them about the work, how we can relate, how we can work with the Kenyan Guild, they were a bit reluctant, but as I said, they obeyed. I did some errors because I remember one time I told them, we were going to a Kenyan meeting. It was not a Presbyterian it was just an ordinary parish meeting. And because they had told me that they had tried even before we came to reach some African group. And they had gone to Bahati and had talked to the Women's Guild in Bahati Matters Church. That's the only thing they told me they had done. So one day I told them, let's go to a meeting there. We got the letter, it will start at 9. And so by 9 we were at Bahati, outside the church, a big group of these white ladies. But it's only the door that was opened and the chairman trying to arrange chairs here and there. And they didn't like that because the meeting did not start until 11 while we waited. So another time, there was a big gathering in the South Sea head office to prepare the ground and so on for the headquarters, the present headquarters you see. So the General Secretary, who was the late Bernard Muindi, had called the whole country, so people to come and see our new headquarters at South Sea. We have the plot. And so they came so many. And they were hungry because the meeting ended at 3. So when there was the second meeting to lay the foundation stone, a big harabe, I told my guild, St. Andrews, let's prepare sandwiches, many, and go and sell just a little money. They came on a Saturday, we prepared in cartons, but when we took them to the meeting, the people did not buy. They didn't want the sandwiches. They had their meru, ngwase, whatever, to eat. And so we brought all of them back to St. Andrew's Hall, stacked cartons full of sandwiches. Sundays, we announced that there were free sandwiches in the hall. People could go and eat. So I made some, some errors here and there, but still they were patient and they helped me a number of times. We had royal guests from England, and they would help me to bring even some of their rugs, carpets in the hall there and there, and bring their nice cups. And they cooperated very well. In fact, I learned a lot from them. But still, I was still trying little by little to advise them and encourage them to join our guild, Kenyan Guild, so that we could work together. And I remember that was the time, that season of Madaraka. I know some young people do not know Madaraka, but those were the days when the Africans were given a responsibility by the government. Africans to head big institutions, schools, police forces. Because in my guild, those ladies were big ladies. They were wives of very big people in the government, from the police to everything. If I remember one time my secretary was from that building there where people do not like, near the Serena Hotel. I can't remember what they call it. And the people today, they don't like that. If you are from that club, that association, it's not good, but she was my secretary in the guild. And so it was a Madaraka season, and the people were getting responsibility, Africans. And I don't know how, you might read about this and find out how that we are also a transition from in our church, so that the General Secretary, John Gatto, had become the General Secretary. This Charles Kareri from Tumutumu was now the moderator of the General GA, General Administration. Things were changing all over, not only in the government. And we must look for the history to know how we changed from Church of Scotland Mission to Presbyterian Church of East Africa. We changed the name, and the Madaraka also was, then we could say was in the church. Because as I said, Reverend Gatto became the General Secretary and the moderator was an African, and so on, little by little. It was gradual. It wasn't something that was just done haphazardly. And so things started to change. And of course now it was easy for me to move my group from St. Andrews now to go and join the Women's Guild of Kenya. And so Mrs. Mareka, who was the national leader of the guild, she was very happy, because she was always very unhappy about that here we are in Africa, in Kenya, and we are running our system in a different way. And so she asked that we should be ordained. I was not ordained. I just was reading Women's Guild. And so Mrs. Mareka demanded that I be ordained. And so shamefully, I was to be dedicated with my followers, who to be members of the Women's Guild here in Kenya. And so we were dedicated. Susan Dirito would go to the books and see when I was dedicated with my followers here at St. Andrews. And then I became, now we could go to the parish meetings. My committee could go to the Presbyterian meeting of the Women's Guild. I worked very hard now, to try and now join our Kenyan people. It was very interesting. I worked until I was the secretary of the Central Committee. It was not easy again, because there was no secretariat at the office. You heard that we had just built the head office, and so I was to carry the files and so on at home. And so that's how the Women's Guild of St. Andrews joined the Women's Guild of Kenya, Women's Guild. And now it was easy, although we were also all the time opening our meetings with prayer and the word, we were now able to follow what is written here in the P.C.E.A Women's Guild, Kenya, as St. Andrews Women's Guild of Kenya. And in fact, I would like to read those words that the guild should really know. I know it is in the book, but many times we don't, when we join the guild, that we just take it as usual. But the word is ekira kio ya kwionania kuri Ngai ati wi mundu mwitikiriku na muruti wira utari undu ungimuconora, ona wi mundu uheanaga uhoro uria wama na muheanire uria murungaru. Timothy 2:15. And I would also like to read it in English, because this is what leaders, and this is what continued to continue to help every member of the Women's Guild to know. It is 2 Timothy 2:15. And it says, study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. The word of God should be the first thing in the woman's guild. And I can even now remember that when my mother joined the woman's guild, when she came home, by the way, that time I was not born, and it was 1922, but when I grew up and I was able to understand, I could see that all the time, whatever she would say about the Women's Guild or the work of God, we would read a word. We would read the scriptures and say. We would even laugh when my sisters who had started to learn English, we would laugh at her when she said plipi. Plipi po, pasi po. You know, to read in the evening. Philippians 4, verse 4. Rejoice in the Lord, and I say again, rejoice. They were learning scriptures and words, verses, and then some of the things that I saw there at St. Andrews, I could relate them with what I could see my mother doing and saying. She had really gone through the teaching of a woman's guild. I was very, very happy last Sunday when unfortunately I didn't go. I gave an apology. I was invited and they had really asked me to go at Kikuyu. I was very happy when I say these mentors, they called them mentors, selected women being dedicated by the moderator who will be mentoring the young girls. And that's what the guild is. I would like to read some of the work, the duties of the St. Andrews Committee, when I started, I know they would like to know, because we continued with these things even when I was the chairman much later after the whites had gone. And we were really doing the same thing that the other Kenyan churches were doing, and we were getting along very well. I can't remember the time they told us, you came from the whites group, you don't know. No, we just, interacted and got into their groups very smoothly. In the Guild Committee at St. Andrews, some of the things that the committee did that I would like to highlight, I know they do it and we do it and we have done it, was to, after the reading of the minutes, we were all the time giving out financial report. Financial report was very, very important. Another thing I had learned from the whites was that of transparency. They were very transparent with money, and they were accounting it very, very well. Not that they were good, I could say, but because they would report every time. Every month, the treasurer has to read the financial report and say about the money out and the money in. And that made it very easy for money to be accounted for. And also, we were allocating duties to the members, what they will do on Sundays, tea. The visitors, as I said, we had the sister churches that were passing at St. Andrews when they come for shopping from Eldoret, from Dar es Salaam, from Mombasa. And again, that made us quite alert, and trying to do the best we could. And also to propose the areas of the that needed help. each end of the year, we had to sit down and see where are we going to send our money this year. And of course, we had the money, I must say, and I'm going to say where it came from. To the Salvation, the first thing we did was to give to the Salvation Army, to the children's home, especially hospitals that had children. We would send money there. St. Paul's Theological College. Today is an university, but it started as a divinity school where pastors went to study. No degrees also. These places, we were allocating this money every year to those places. But where did the money come from? The money came from, of course, from members, donations, and all that. But each year we had a jabo sale, a kind of harambe, where members would bring the old clothes, utensils, whatever, and we would hold a big sale outside St. Andrews. And the people would come from far. They knew that at St. Andrews, there will be a sale in a certain month of the year, and you could buy something very nice, because some of these whites would bring things to Kenya. They don't want to go back with them, and the guild had money to allocate to these places, and each member was supposed, of course, to give contribution and donation, in whichever way that they needed. And so that was what the little I can say about how the guild started as St. Andrews, as I know it. Perhaps somebody else can give it in another way, but that's the way I know that the St. Andrews Women's Guild received the work and joined the Kenyan Women's Guild to work together for the Lord. Before I finish, in conclusion, I would like to read something here to say, but I would like to read, because it would be my prayer that the dignity and the order that Guild had should not be diluted or hijacked to many other things, because today we see the guilds or groups trying to do difficult harabes, projects that sometimes are too difficult so that the work of the Lord to which we are called it's not given enough time. Together with the projects and helps and visits and the beautiful things that we do, we should not forget that we were called to preach. We were like evangelists. Guilds should be like evangelists. When they go to visit, to take the word of God, the scriptures, and to work together with the pastors, with the ministers, so that the work of God should continue. And not only, in the material things, also in the hearts and the spiritual, nourishment of the people. Because if the church do not get proper support, especially from families, when I say families, I say parents and the children should also be brought into the church. And it is the work of guilds to see that the families are all taken care of, and that you will definitely continue to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ, to which we have been called. Perhaps I would have mentioned that the whites did not just go leave the church, St. Andrews, like an exodus. No, they stayed as their responsibility in the government or in churches or anywhere else were given to some Africans, they would stay for a little while and then look for a job in other countries. One time in South Africa, when we had visited with my husband, we found a number of St. Andrews members there, especially Cape Town. We found them. We looked at the directory and we would try to see if there is anybody we know, and we found that there were numbers. In Scotland too, we met many who, of course, that was their home. They went there. And as I stayed as a chairman for some time, we started to see that there were many other Africans who had joined St. Andrews that could lead the guild. And so I can remember people like the late Mrs. Mary Mohoro, even late Mrs. Kamakiro also helped, late Mrs. Kebisho. All these have had their turn as chairman of the St. Andrews Women's Guild. The name president was dropped by President Moi. He said he was the only president of Kenya, but we, of course, adopted the chairman, and we had a number of other Kenyan women who became, and they are still are, and doing very well, the chairman of the Women's Guild at St. Andrews.